It's as close to time travel as we're gonna get. This week in music history with Marty Miller.
Last one before the holidays, boys and girls. For me, anyway. Don't know about you. Maybe you've had your holiday and had a great time. I need mine now. All right, so this is the week of August 4th until August 8th in music history. We'll be asking and wondering, why was there so much cowbell on early Guns N' Roses stuff? Well, Duff McKagan?
Stephen had this huge drum kit when I met him and Slash.
And do you fancy buying some very famous sweat you could have done this week?
The garment is also said to still contain remnants of the legend's perspiration.
Who? What legend? Whatever it was on sale in 2008. And in 1969, a certain fella walked across a certain pedestrian crossing in his bare feet. And it started all sorts of conspiracies.
It was a very hot day, and I happened to be wearing sandals.
More about that in minutes.
This week in music history, a week in less than 10 minutes.
In 1967 this week, a very young Monkees fan stowed away on the band's plane between shows in Minneapolis and St. Louis. Now, the girl's father threatened to bring charges for transporting a minor across state lines. It was madness back then about that band.
Seems reminiscent of Beatlemania. Thousands of kids going crazy to get near them. I think they've all gone monkey nuts.
This week in 1975, Robert Plant, formerly of Led Zeppelin, of course, and very much of Led Zeppelin in 75, he and his wife were both badly injured when the hire car that he was driving spun off the road and crashed in Rhodes.
And that's where I had the car wreck, which kind of stopped things for a while. My foot came off and my arm went spinning round and round, but I got it bad. I couldn't walk or do anything for ages either, but yeah, it was bad, it was terrible. But when you're faced with something as dramatic as that, you haven't got time to be scared. You've just got to switch the engine off quick so that the thing doesn't blow up, you just got to do things and work. You can't imagine fear and pain.
You know that whole phrase, been there, done that, got the t-shirt? Well, David Crosby did it before everybody else. And in 1983, everything caught up with him. He was sentenced to 5 years in jail in Texas for cocaine and firearms offences. David probably had no idea why he was sent to jail because he slept through most of his trial.
David Crosby, formerly of the group Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, turned himself into FBI agents and was arrested by West Palm Beach police. He's been a fugitive since failing to appear for a Texas bond hearing in Dallas last month. Texas authorities were trying to revoke an appeal bond after Crosby was arrested on drug and weapons charges in California.
This week in music history, a week in less than 10 minutes.
On the subject of bad-for-you stuff, Jeff Porcaro in 1992, the drummer from Toto, died. He was just 38. His death had been debated for years. Some say it was caused by an allergic reaction to a garden pesticide, a very Spinal Tap, while others say Porcaro's heart was weakened by lots of smoking and lots of cocaine. One thing not in doubt: he was an amazing drummer. Here he is explaining how he came up with the shuffle for Rosanna, stealing it from well-known drummer.
The Bernard Purdie thing is basically this. The John Bonham beat that I copied from Fool in the Rain. Putting those two beats together, I came up with my own little kind of hybrid.
In 1981 this week, Stevie Nicks released her first solo album, the Belladonna album, and on it, 4 massive hits. Stop Dragging My Heart Around, the one with Tom Petty. There was Leather and Lace with Don Henley, Edge is 17, and After the Glitter Fades. Producer Jimmy Iovine.
I said, if a woman sings an aggressive guy's lyric, I can't miss. You got Stevie Nicks singing, they make a meal of some bright-eyed kid. You need someone to look after you. A woman saying that to a man, can't miss.
In 1988, Appetite for Destruction, the Guns N' Roses debut album, went number 1 in the States after spending 57 weeks on the chart and selling 5 million copies. Now, you know the singles, you know the story behind the album. It now has sold close to 30 million, and it is the best-selling debut of all time as well in the States. But if you ever wondered why there was so much cowbell on early Guns N' Roses stuff, Steve Adler was their drummer, but this is their bass player, Duff McKagan.
Steven had this huge drum kit when I met him in Slash. It's like double bass drum, shit ton of toms, way too many cymbals, all this stuff. And he would play all of it at once. You know, where's the beat? You know? Mm-hmm. But he had a groove in there. He had this little engine. Eventually when we, you know, Guns N' Roses became those five guys, Izzy and I started taking his drums away, like hiding them. So he ended up with the single kick drum, snare, no rack toms.
Really?
One floor tom, hi-hat, crash, a ride, and a cowbell.
No.
So from that huge drum kit down to this Ramones kit.
Zipping through a week in a matter of minutes. This Week in Music History, the podcast.
In 1980, John Lennon this week began recording his final album. He just didn't know it at the time, and nor did anyone else. Double Fantasy was being recorded in New York City. It would come out on November 17th on the newly formed Geffen Records. Here's John and Yoko.
Actually, we recorded the album before we talked to Geffen.
Right, exactly.
We decided to make it first and then answer all the letters and inquiries that came. We eliminated the ones that said, can we hear it first? Okay, you can go to hell. Also, he wasn't a big company, so you weren't dealing with this anonymous grey suit with the president changing every 2 days. I mean, there was more presidents of Capitol and EMI. They were always waiting for the Beatles to die. They died first every time, you know. They always treated each record as the last record.
Famous Sweat? 2008, Elvis Presley's Peacock jumpsuit was sold at auction for $300,000, making it the most expensive piece of Elvis memorabilia ever sold at an auction.
Described as being adorned with gold lame and rhinestones, the garment is also said to still contain remnants of the legend's perspiration. It was worn during performances, including one in Las Vegas about 40 years ago. At some point in time, the zipper was damaged and no longer works. Nonetheless, the suit is rare and also significant in the history of the King's career.
This week in 1969, the photo session for the cover of the Beatles' Abbey Road album took place on the pedestrian crossing outside Abbey Road Studios in St John's Wood in London. So the photographer Ian Macmillan, on a stepladder in the middle of the road, he took 6 shots of John, Ringo, Paul and George walking across the very famous zebra crossing. And then you'll remember all the speculation about Barefoot Paul. Was he really there? Had he in fact died? Who'd killed him? What had happened?
It was a very hot day, and I happened to be wearing sandals, like I am today. So I just kicked them off, and just because it was so hot, and went across barefoot. There was no special meaning.
Finally, in 1992, this week, a riot broke out during a Guns N' Roses and Metallica gig in Montreal, when Metallica's show was cut short after James Hetfield was injured by fireworks. Guns N' Roses took to the stage, but then Axl said, well, my throat's sore, so we're going to go home now. Then there was riots.
300 police officers were called to quell the riot, which erupted when the heavy metal group Guns N' Roses left the concert stage 55 minutes after the headline performance began. Lead singer Axl Rose says he couldn't sing because of a throat injury, which prompted postponements earlier on the band's 24-city tour. But that wasn't all that triggered the melee. Earlier, a sold-out concert by the group Metallica was interrupted when lead singer James Hetfield was burned by fireworks. Angry fans then hurled rocks and bottles at officers, and others burned T-shirts and set a dozen small fires in the building. Other hooligans burnt a car on display.
And that is a look at This Week in Music History, August 4th until 8th. Until next time, again, we're on holidays for a wee while. Enjoy the rest of your summer. My name is Marty Miller. Good luck to you.
This Week in Music History, a week in less than 10 minutes.